Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 65th episode of Stories of Service, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And once again, for this episode, we have another amazing guest. And one of the things I love doing is bringing on others who are really active in the online media space. So today I have Heather Parady. Heather, how you doing?
So great. And I love online media, and I'm excited to get to know you. And it's just a joy to be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you. So the reason why I love what Heather does is that her content has always given me so much inspiration. It's so authentic. And it's a lot of times I'll see something she posts and it's sort of the catalyst that pushes me to put something out for myself. And she's been able to do this through just innovative ways of sharing ideas, storytelling, just building her brand. She's a digital content creator. She's had a number of podcasts and projects throughout the years. Her current podcast explores people who found success in following the roads less traveled. Each week, Heather Parady, she speaks to professional creatives who have figured out a way to make a living doing what they love. From actors and comedians to freelance photographers and writers, she talks to the world's best storytellers who found success using unconventional paths. Her topics include the tactical side of building the creative business to spirituality and the creative process. And not only that, she's been featured in Forbes magazine and many other prominent outlets and is best known as an expert creator within the podcast community. Welcome, Heather.
It's funny you say an expert creator in the podcasting community, and I still can't nail somebody's intro like you just did. I record those after the fact just because I get so nervous saying people's intros. So you killed that. You talk about a professional. It's you.
Well, thank you, Heather. You know, and it's one of those things where I just started off doing it this way because I didn't want to have to spend time to do the intro later. I wanted to be able to just take the whole live content and go straight to my audio download. So I just had to learn on the fly.
But it's a skill, man. You nailed it. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So first off, tell me where you grew up and kind of a little bit about your background and your childhood and how you kind of got started on a creative path.
Yeah, grew up in Arkansas, note the accent, and I was homeschooled my entire life. At my first day of real school, I was 23. I went to a community college, never had walked inside of a classroom before, was incredibly awkward and insecure about any kind of, academia or anything like that. I really struggled in school. I took a lot of developmental classes and stuff, and just never saw myself as somebody who, I guess the thought never occurred to me. I don't want to say I didn't see myself as somebody who could, make a living doing what I love or start a business, or that thought never occurred to me. Like, you grow up in a small town, and I grew up kind of in a Bible Belt, very religious area, and you're a woman. So it's just kind of like, well, I'm going to become a youth pastor's wife one day. And nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. But that was what my mindset was. And so when I started getting exposed to personal development and all that stuff, it just opened my eyes. It was like, you make a path and you walk down it. Now, there are cards that are handed to you for sure. And there's some people who 100%. And there are things that happen to you. But also, we're also the author of a lot of our days and a lot of our months that make up our life. And that thought just messed me up. So when I started really trying to go on a self-discovery path of what I really wanted, which, I mean, who the hell doesn't go through that? I've landed most recently, and I'm in my mid-late 30s now, and I've just now started identifying as more of a creative, which is wild because throughout, my childhood and throughout even my young adulthood, I had photography businesses, and I was always making films and creating stuff. So of course I was a creative. I'm just now starting to accept that and actually embrace it
that way. Yeah, that's so interesting. So when you were a kid, you were like, I knew that I was a writer. Like, I knew that I could write as a child. I just, we had a day in 8th grade, for an example, where they brought, the what you want to be when you grow up day. And I chose a journalist with the Columbus Dispatch because I was always doing good journal entries and other things. And so people kind of saw that I could do writing. I didn't develop the skill very well because I got distracted by partying and other things, but I knew there was something there. But for you in your childhood, did you know that there was maybe something like that you were kind of honing in on even
The
before you went to
thing,
college?
the thing that I've always honed in on was spirituality. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a pastor, and I was very, very drawn to like inner work and God and like a deeper thing, which is weird. It was super, super weird. Um, I didn't grow up in church. We went to church for a few months here and there, and it was kind of spotty. But I was very drawn to like the spirit realm and stuff like that, which is super, like I said, it's just weird. It was a very weird thing. So I assumed that I was going to go into some kind of ministry. Like God had a calling on my life, and I was going to be a minister. I wanted to be a missionary at one point and all this stuff. I originally didn't, like I told you, I didn't go to college. I went to a ministry school, got my like certification to be a minister and all of that, traveled, did all of that. I had to unlearn a lot of that, almost cussed on your podcast, a lot of that bull crap and fall into kind of another deeper appreciation for spirituality outside of like religious context. So the through line throughout my childhood was not creativity, was not making, it was God. And what I've discovered over, the past few years is the way that I honor God and the way that I connect with source and this beautiful heartbeat in this world, love. The way that I connect through that is through making things and through connecting with people. And it's not on a pulpit or some kind of formula. It's through creation and questions and curiosity and connecting with people like you on a Sunday.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. And it's so true because you may think that you're on this one path and this is where you're going to go in life, but then life just starts to evolve and
Amen.
and who you are sort of just takes on a new meaning. So what was the first, you're in your mid 20s, you go to community college. And so take me back to that time where was there a sort of launch point where you were like, oh, I'm going to join these online communities. And I mean, where was the internet? It was probably about 10 years ago. So I'm guessing like the internet wasn't where it is today. So how did all this get started?
Yeah, great. Man, God, you're making me throw back. So I discovered psychology and was really, really into that in school. So I decided I wanted to go into therapy. Well, I needed to go to therapy and then also be a therapist. So I buckled in and eventually community college, they tell you in community college, this is fine, but what you need is a bachelor's degree. And then when you get a bachelor's degree, then you'll get a job. So then you go and you get your bachelor's degree, and I guess they tell you, you know what? This isn't going to cut it. People who have master's degrees, those are the people who get jobs.
Oh, yeah.
So my little
hamster wheel.
Yeah. My insecurity, my self-doubt, my having to prove myself, I busted my ass through all of that, all the way into graduate school. And guess what? Side note, spoiler alert, I didn't get my doctorate, but guess what they tell you in master's?
You need to get a doctorate.
Right, 100%. So I'm like, I already heard this, suckers. I ain't going to be doing this no more. But when I was in grad school, I had on the side, I had gotten married at that time. I had my first kid. And, I sort of to make income, I picked up a camera and I just started booking shoots. And I did really well with that. I started booking quite a bit of gigs and even out of state and getting to travel. And it was just,
wow.
I always tell people, I don't think it's that I was a great photographer. I was okay. I was good. I worked at it. I think I was really good at the digital marketing and figuring out how to get jobs online and stuff like that. And that's what I really enjoyed. I love photography, but I also really love the game of like, let me make something and put up, at that time, it was a Facebook page, and tag everybody in it and then ask them to share it and see how many leads I could get, which is fascinating. Also, around the same time, Periscope had come out, and that was like, for those who don't remember, it's a live streaming app, and it was the first time I had gone live. Oh, and it was so terrible. I still have some of those saved. They're hilarious. I was like, hey, y'all, you can follow your dreams, but I started building like somewhat of a following on that. And I was like, damn, you can do this? Like, people follow you because you say stupid stuff on live. And I remember being late to my classes because I would be in my car live streaming on Periscope, telling people they could follow their dreams. I don't know why I was doing all this. And even my classmates would tell me, they're like, you're in the wrong place. You shouldn't be here. You need to be out there building a business and building a brand. I mean, they didn't even understand what we know about what you can do online. And they were telling me that. One time we even went in to get an assessment done, of a career assessment, and I was the only one who scored like, kind of more leadership and starter and
Mhm.
whatever. But I just, again, had all that kind of self-doubt of like, well, that's not a serious thing.
Right, because people didn't take it seriously. They
No, that's
didn't.
not professional. Like, if
No.
it's, and coming from where I came from and really being insecure about myself and my my knowledge and what I could do, I felt like I had something I needed to prove, which I did. You know what I mean? I got that paper, I got the license, I got the job offers. I sat there and I cried because I was really abandoning myself, my core, because I was judging it. I I was thinking the world was judging me.
Right.
And now I know I judge myself and I'm insecure about things. People don't give a shit
No,
what you
they
do.
really don't. They really don't. They don't care if you go to college, don't go to college. They don't care about any of those things. That's what you learn as you get older is that people don't care. They care about what's in your soul and what's in your
Yes.
heart and how you make them feel. They don't
Yes.
None of those things matter about your status, but you're sort of trained in thinking that that's the path that you have to go down. I
Mm-hmm.
was the same way in the military. I thought I had to get my bachelor's, then I had to get my master's, and then I had to, bachelor's, become an officer, get my master's, get accredited in public relations. I mean, it was definitely that same hamster wheel, but in another area. So
Mm-hmm.
I can totally relate to what you're saying. And then you come to this realization, you're like, none of this freaking matters. I
And
mean, it's
now I have
nice,
all this
but yeah,
debt
right.
to
It,
prove something.
yes,
I just
yes.
wanted to help people. I wanted to love people. Even from like when it was all about ministry. I just
Right.
wanted to reach people's hearts and like look at you, Teresa, and be like, you are a badass and you have so much in you, and encourage you in that and hug you and like be a part of your journey of whatever God's called you to. But no, I needed something. And then even when it was all over and said and done, I didn't have one ounce. I had a lot more knowledge, and I don't regret going to school. There was a lot of great things
Right.
that happened there.
A lot of good
I,
stuff comes from it,
I
but
didn't feel more qualified. I
no.
still like, I can't help people. Who
Yeah.
am I to help people? How are they going to listen to me? So all that to say, I left. We were talking about how great support systems are. Cried to my husband. I just thought I was going to be this, but I don't. And he's just like, go out, Heather. Just stop it. Go after what you want to do. And that was about, I think it was about 5 years ago now. And it's been a clawing, messy, difficult, awesome, incredible journey over the past 5 years of figuring out what the hell do I want to do with this internet thing and
Mhm.
this microphone thing and all of
Mhm.
that. How can I blaze my own trail? And that's where we're at today.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And it really shows that with these tools, people really can be the masters of their own destiny. And there's so much out there right now about that's poo-pooing on social media and says, "Oh gosh, we're owned by the big tech companies, and we're just all slaves to the disinformation." And I have always
Mm-hmm.
felt, Heather, that we have the power to take these tools into our own hands and use them for what they can best be used for. If
Yes.
I mean, yes, there are limitations, and I know that there are algorithms, and there's like I saw your last podcast where you had the guest on that talked about how does everyone have to do reels. Well, I'll be the first to admit I don't want to spend the time to
Right.
develop reels. I get
Right.
it. I understand why they get so many likes and views, and I get that Instagram loves and TikTok love promoting people who do them, but that is a whole nother side of your brand that you have to spend a considerable amount of time on to
100%.
build. And if that's not what you want to do, well, guess what? I'll take less followers or less likes or less whatever,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
in order, especially right now while I'm still active duty in the Navy. And so I think that's,
Navy. Woo, woo. My husband's at drill right now. He's in the Navy too.
oh, is he really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
no way. I
Navy
didn't know
fan,
that.
man.
Yeah, I did not know you were a military spouse. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, small world. Yep. And so I didn't know when going into this though that really it's what you make of it and it's what you want to do with it. And so it sounds like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what you've been doing. So what was your 5 years ago, what was your first show and what was kind of the first thing you built?
It was called Unconventional. It was called just simply Unconventional. And I just wanted to talk to people who are weird like me and doing weird stuff. I think the first guy that I interviewed, he was a friend of mine, he and his wife, they were in their late 20s and they had 7 foster kids in their home, all brothers and sisters. They
Wow.
let a family of 7 kids whose parents left come and live with them. And guess what? You know what's cool? They're still with them.
Wow.
10, 15 years later, they're still together. So I remember he was my very first interview. And the whole idea of that was just to say, like, you can do some weird shit in this world, meaningful things, fun
Mhm.
things. Like, there are some superheroes out there that we don't even know about, right?
There really are.
Yeah, so I started that. And then I'll never forget, the last job that reached out that says, "Hey, congratulations, you got a job." And I cried. And Brian, my husband, was like, most people don't cry when they get job offers. I emailed back and I said, "I'm sorry, I've taken another position," or whatever. And the position was me, right? And when I sent that, it wasn't 5 minutes later, I got an email from a podcaster who I didn't really know. And they said, "Hey, do you help produce podcasts?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I do." I had never done, besides my own. I was like,
Mhm.
"Of course, I have a business. You're my first client." And they were. And I started just slowly freelancing and looking at the skills in and this is what I tell people all the time: look at the skills in your hand, don't judge them, because we'll be like, "Oh, I just cook. Oh, I just edit podcasts. Oh, I just have this little thing. Oh, I know how to use StreamYard." You know what I mean? And we
Mhm.
don't understand that these are skill sets that some people don't have and they'll pay you
Right.
for. And so I
They will.
started freelancing and slowly just started kind of building up from there and switching industries and playing around.
I love it. And, you
Mm-hmm.
remind me so much of my friend Olivia Nunn. She was the same way. I mean, she built her podcast from doing it while she was active duty with Army Soldier for Life. And then it just sort of morphed into, well, when she got out and retired, she had nonprofits coming out, reaching out to her saying, "Will you produce our podcast?" And so now
Yep.
she's the MOA podcast host, but she's now branched into her own communications LLC. I just had her on
I
about a
love
month
that.
ago. Yep, and then now she wants to get into public speaking, and I
Yep.
mean, it's just it really can morph into all these other businesses and all these other directions, and I love the fact that you said you decided to just say no to the job offer and yes to taking a chance on you and doing the things that you knew, you could put your full self into, because as we know, I mean, I love working for an organization or for a company or for the Navy and serving those bigger causes. But no matter where you are in the food chain on those jobs, I feel unless you're the CEO or maybe the top people in those organizations, you have such a limited bandwidth sometimes of your ability to influence.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're an entrepreneur, if you can afford to be, and again, there's a big caveat there, you have that opportunity to take everything that you're doing and everything that you are and build something bigger. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I'm going to say some stuff right here that people don't say, but it's the freaking truth. Is you just said, if you can afford to be. It is a privilege to get to quit everything and go in on all yourself. And a lot of people don't have that privilege. And I want to acknowledge that right here, that you have to eat and you have to
You
feed
do.
your children and pay rent. So this whole like abandon it all, quit everything and all that, I am not for. What I'm for is honoring yourself and having a plan and sticking to it. And if sometimes that plan might be that I work a job for 6 months and slowly work myself out of it, I think when we start to give up and that 6 months turns into 5 years, because we've become apathetic and we're like, "Oh, one day," I think that's a conversation. But if you're strategically taking a position or working a part-time job or taking here's the truth. In these 5 years, I've taken 2 contracts that I've needed to supplement
Sure.
income that I haven't been able to replace.
Yep.
Two. Miserable, hated it, got out of them, but used them as tools to put my head above water and figure out, because there's been a lot of transitions in my business. And that's another thing we don't talk about. You don't just go, I'm called to be a podcast producer. And it's like, and all these people start coming in. And then for the rest of your life, you just like kill it in that. No, this is what happens. You say, oh, somebody's like, hey, can I hire you to be a podcast producer? And you're like, oh, I guess. Okay. And then you start doing that. And 6 months later, somebody says, oh, do you know how to build a website? And you're like, I guess. And you start doing that and you shift and you adjust and you pivot and you build something, a body of work and skill sets. And through those times, sometimes you don't make a lot of money and you have to figure out different ways to do things. And again, the dream, what's given to you on Instagram is that you make this decision, this badass decision. I abandoned it, everything, and everything just works out. And that's not reality. So yeah, now should you do it? Hell yeah, you should, because it's amazing. But it's a lot messier than what people say.
I agree. I mean, that's why I've been in the Navy almost 27 years, is because I didn't have, well, number one, just like you, I didn't have the confidence to branch out and take the financial risk that I knew getting out would do. And then two, there was always something that was kind of keeping me in, like whether I was on that hamster wheel, like you described, it was, oh, I could get this next qualification, or, oh gosh, it would be great to serve on a carrier and be an aircraft carrier public affairs officer. And so I just kept just kind of hitting whatever my next milestone was for my community. And at the same time, I was meeting great, and I still am meeting great people and serving in great organizations. But along that road, I've had a lot of messiness too. I've had a lot of mental health challenges. I've had a lot of bad working environments, which, sometimes I think it's my own stress level that causes those things. I'm not blaming other people. But, I think that for everyone, their time of when they can be a creative and when they can pivot, as you say, is going to be different. For me, I mean, I'm 40, I'm 46 years old, and maybe my time to be creative isn't going to happen until later in life. And so, like you said, there's no script for how to do this and when to do it. It's up to the individual person to decide look at what Ed did. He sort of had Ed Squire. He's got an amazing story where he pivoted, midlife, making all this money, and then finally was just done with it all, and then didn't do anything for a while. And just kind of was he told me he would just, heard him on another show, he would just go to a coffee shop every day for days on end and just try to figure out what he was supposed to do. So there's no script for how to find this.
We're so hard on ourselves, and everything I'm saying to you is like my experience. I'm hard on me. You know what I mean? I judge things so much. Like I assume that there's just like this linear path. And there's another show that I started recently. I'm addicted to podcasts with a friend of mine. And what we're doing is we're looking at lives of celebrities, of people that you think are just, whatever. And the pivots and the adjustments through all of their lives is just like astronomical.
Oh,
Constantly. And so I'm convinced, I really am, that professional creatives, successful creatives, whatever the hell you want to call them, are people who look at things as projects as opposed to taking them on as their identity. Because when we start taking things on as our identity, like this show, Stories of Service, if you're like, I am the host of Stories of Service and this is what I'm called to do, probably for sure, right? But we also have to look at Stories of Service and then all these other little things as a project that we're working on that may work and it may not. Seth Godin talks a lot about this. And be okay, because guess what? Let's say, God forbid, your show, my show hits the fan tomorrow. I hope that doesn't happen. I will cry. I'll probably gain 5 pounds and eat cheese dip like a maniac. No, for real, because that's my baby and I love it. But also, too, you better hell believe there'll be another project coming up in a couple of months.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree. Yeah. And I that's one of the reasons why I'm always very much like I diversify across my social media. I don't allow myself to just use, I mean, LinkedIn's my biggest one, but I try very hard to continue to keep up with the others. And I'm constantly thinking in my mind, like what other what other projects are there? I don't know if when I retire that the show is going to be the only thing that I do. I really don't. And I'm open to what will come next and what the opportunities are when the time comes, because I can't I can't predict the future. I can only say what I'm into now. I thought when I was into animal advocacy and I was going to be this animal activist, and I still have a huge passion towards animals, and I may go in that direction. I may continue to volunteer, go back with Humane Society of the United States, largest animal protection organization, and do, you know,
You're like a little
give
side
them a
note.
little bit of plug, but and they're great. I mean, they work on the policy level, and I just admire their work so much. And so I really don't know. Like I like you, I'm very much like, okay, is it going to be this project or that project? Whatever life takes me is where I'm going to go. And like you, I'm very blessed that I have a pension that will be coming to me.
Yep.
I'm able to live without the burdens of paying. My bills will be paid,
Yep.
and I live way below my means, and I have all my life.
Yep.
And so,
Smart.
yeah, but that's because I thought in my mind that I would make the military my last real job.
Yeah.
And so that was very thoughtful as I even went through my 20s and my 30s. But for you, I want to get back to kind of you had your first podcast, and then did you do the NFT podcast right after that? Because that's the huge, big, successful one that everyone's heard of. But how did that come about? And did you already have a bunch of shows in between there?
So I would say the show that I'm the most proud of is my first one. And I know newbies hit that 1 million in 8 months
Right.
and all that stuff, which
Sure.
is crazy numbers. That the show that I did was unconventional and eventually changed to Unconventional Leaders. We did about 550 episodes of that, had some incredible guests on that I never dreamed that I would get to talk to people like, when I told you that we're just kind of got exposed to personal development and it just opened my eyes. Those authors, like getting to be on a call like this with them. It was so incredible. I did that for 3.5 years, doing the freelance stuff. Then I eventually started getting into mastermind groups, courses, helping service-based providers build out programs and online courses, which is what I do right now. And it was only last year that newbies happened. So I've been doing this for, a while. It was literally just a year ago. It was, gosh, when did I meet Rich? I think it was June of 2021. We were at a podcasting conference and me and him just like clicked, dude. Like we have, I don't think I've ever met anyone yet who on a mic we can just vibe with. Like me and dude can mic all day long. And it was just like this perfect collision between, timing. NFTs was like the number one searched term.
Yep.
And we hit it before anybody else. We started our show in August, and I think all the other shows started happening in November, December, and then we were good. So it's this really great mixture of timing and a lot of
preparation and hard work.
And I've never experienced anything like that before. I will again. But I see what people are talking about when they say it's luck, and it's also, we both had hundreds of podcast episodes we produced. We knew what the hell we were doing. And so that show just took off. I ended up closing my business for that, which I totally don't recommend. I was just kind of went all in on it. And when I was kind of going all in on it, he was kind of stepping out of it a little bit. And
I was going to ask you why it ended. I didn't know if that's an off limits question, but and if it is, I'm okay with that.
I'll say what he has said on other interviews, which is that he really wanted to go all in on his current clients, which I can respect. And, Rich's main objective is entrepreneurship and scaling businesses. And he's cool being behind the scenes to do that. I'm not. You can call it ego, you can call it I need therapy, whatever. I like this camera. I like microphones. I like media. I want to create stuff. I want to make money, but that's always secondary to me. To me, it's almost like and I wish I wasn't like this. I really do, because I would be richer. Okay. But for me, money is a tool that lets me do what I love. And I like more of that because I also love traveling, you know what I'm saying? And I like all that.
Yes.
But my thought when I wake up in the morning isn't like, damn, how am I going to make a new sale? It's like, God, what am I going to make today? And
Right.
so I think that collision of
Yeah, you guys just had
priorities,
different creative
a
directions, it sounds
hundred
like,
percent. So
and that's all.
again, back to that project thing, I got romantic about it and I was just butthurt over it because I was like, oh my God, because we had so many listeners and we were making
Mhm.
some significant amount of money for a podcast that I had never made before with a show. And so letting that go, it was such a great lesson for me because again, back to that project mentality, we did a project together, but that project's not me. And I'm
Right.
ready to do another project. Right.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yep.
No, and I think it was probably a good lesson for you too, because I mean,
So
people talk
many.
about that, about what it's. I mean, it reminds me of the actors who walk away during a hit show. A good
Mm.
example, a good parallel would be Schitt's Creek. So they've
Mm.
been begged to come back and do it again, and they left at the height of their popularity. They could have kept going, but the father and son, I think it's the son who produced the show, he set out to only do that much
Wow.
of the show. He knew going into it that this was all he was going to do, and then the show blew up and became even bigger than what he had ever imagined it was going to be. Like I, when I get into a show, I go down the show
I love
rabbit hole,
Schitt's Creek. Yeah, me
and
too. Same.
and I love that show. And so he never imagined it was going to make where it made. And he's even to this day constantly begged to do a reboot and this and that. But I'm sure that was really painful for him. But it was kind of like,
100%.
he knew that this was all he wanted to do with this, and this project was done, and now he was ready to move on. So people leave successful projects all the time. Just because
100%.
something's successful doesn't necessarily mean that you keep doing it. It's just like a singer who knows a certain type of song is going to sell,
Yeah.
and they know it, but their creative mind and their heart is calling them to be something
Come
else.
on.
And they have,
100%.
and they have to do it. So it sounds like it was for the best. And now you've had a
It
taste of
was.
it
It
and you know
was.
what it's like to get to that level. What was the direction? Did you go directly into the podcast that you have today after that, or did you take a little time to sort of regroup and
Um,
unwind?
yeah, I mean, I took probably a few weeks off. I can't not make something for very long, which again, I don't know if that's good or not. Like maybe I should take more time off. It's just like this. I remember one time, several times, Brian has been like, you should just quit for a while. And I'm like, what? And I don't think it is. Again, maybe I'll unravel this in therapy. I'm always obviously a big proponent of that. I don't think it's anything other than I love it. It's almost like asking a singer songwriter to not strum their guitar. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I don't know what to do. Like, I love this. So, yeah, I stayed a little bit into the Web3 space, which is what our show was about for a few months. And I kind of had to really sit down with myself and say, if you could make something that you wanted, not something you think would work, which it was working. Like whenever the show ended, I started, I got a collaboration working with Old Navy. I got speaking opportunities. I signed new clients. There was a lot of great stuff that came from Web3, and I kind of could have rode that wave quite a bit more. But the truth was, it's like those weren't the conversations I would necessarily choose to have outside of
Yeah.
newbies. There was
Mhm.
something else. And so I've had to, again, back to that judgment thing, allow myself to follow what Heather's curious about and what Heather wants to talk about, and lost a lot of audience from that, a lot of
Well,
audience
I'm sure. Yep.
intentionally. And it hurts. It's hard because of ego. You want to go back to, and I mean, the audience I had that I gave up to go into newbies,
Sure.
I lost all of it, everything.
Yeah, because it's
You
a
know
lot
what
of
I
people
mean?
aren't into NFTs. I didn't. I'd be honest. I'm not an NFT person. I like you, Heather. But when you were doing like the NFT stuff, I didn't really follow it because I'm not.
Sure,
It's just not
sure,
something I'm into. So
sure.
I think that's what a lot of it is. It's just if people aren't into the content that you're talking about, they just will tune out. They're not really tuning out of you per se, if
Yeah,
that makes sense. They
yeah.
just they're not it. Like, it's like I make a joke whenever I post about animal stuff, my puppy protests or whatever. No one cared. Like, none of my military friends cared that I was at a puppy protest. And, I had like my same, and I hate to say it, middle-aged white demographic that likes animals and
Mm-hmm.
women mostly,
Mm-hmm.
who would follow that content. And to this day, I would say it's still very consistent because they tend to be the demographic that closely identifies to animal protection causes. And
Sure.
so you just have to know when you go into certain things are just only going to resonate with certain people.
hundred
And
percent.
and
Yeah. It was with creativity, so we talked kind of at the beginning of like making a living, doing what you love. This is where it gets really tricky and something we have to get. I don't know if you see, like, I have whiteboards behind me. I was just doing it this morning where,
yep, yeah,
I have that mirror right there. That's where I write a lot of my notes for my content, my creativity, what I want to make that's detached from money, that's detached from
mhm, yeah,
whatever. That other whiteboard is more the business stuff. And
mm,
that's where I have to get unemotional and very, you know, focused on the consumer and who's my client. And those are two different ventures. And ideally, it would be incredible in life when we can merge those into one,
mhm.
where our creative work, whatever, also pays our bills. That's hard.
It is.
Possible. Hard. Okay.
Mhm.
So we have to get really deliberate as creatives to say, okay, I might have my venture, my service, my business offering right here. And the way that I market that is probably going to feel a lot different than the way that I put out the content and my creativity and my work that's for me. And I personally had to separate those two in my mind where, in the show, I don't make money in the show, like, I'm building an audience intentionally right now and not monetizing my audience because I'm trying to nurture and grow that audience again. And I'm not trying to make a business out of that right now. I have my business over here that I'm working. And unfortunately, right now, those are two different worlds. But I have an idea and a plan of how those can come together. But it's going to take me a little bit of time. And that's just the reality of it. Again, it's the unsexy thing to say, but it's the truth.
No, it is the truth. And people need to hear that. I think that a lot of times there are so many misconceptions about having a business versus being a creative. And I've always thought that you can be creative in anything that you do. I don't care
100%.
what job you have. I don't care. There are always new and novel ways to approach a task or to take the way someone else did something, use some of their ideas or not reinvent the wheel completely, but then build on it and make it your own. And I think that every industry has the ability to do that. There isn't like a right or wrong answer to moving forward with it. And so
Yeah.
I think what's going to work for you, Heather, it's going to become something. And whether or not it gets this big or this big, you're still going to learn something from it. And
Yep.
there's still going to be growth that happens. I see humans as always evolving. And I try very hard never to compare myself to others, although I think we
It's
all do
hard.
it. It's hard, but you got to compare yourself to where you were and where you
Right.
were 5, 10,
100%.
15 years ago, and then go, okay, well, do I see things differently now? Am I happier now? And am I growing now? And where are the places that I'm still stuck? Where
A
are the things that I'm still
100%.
repeating and other things? And so I think that that's a really interesting path that you're on now. And I'm really happy for you. I personally love the fact that you constantly put out content and you enjoy doing the silly videos and telling the stories. You're a very good storyteller too. I want
Thank
to get
you.
into that. So you recently did like a storytelling slam. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about
Yeah.
that?
So I'm doing those monthly now just to try to challenge myself. It's easy for me to sit here and look at this camera and talk to you. And that's not, I'm not gonna say I never get nervous with it. And there's not a lot I have to work on, but it's not as challenging right now as standing on a stage in front of, 300 people and telling a story. People who don't know who I am, they don't have a relationship with me. It's scary as hell. So I'm doing that now, like once a month, just going, and it's called the Moth. It's
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yep.
yeah, incredible organization. And yeah, so that's one venture that I have. I've
That's
also
so
been
cool.
doing, I've done stand-up comedy a couple times this year. I've been doing just some acting and auditioning, and it's not anything other than me learning communication.
Yep.
Um, I think there's so much overlap between the arts and what we
There
do
is.
as content creators. And I think we need to learn a little bit more because we pick up all these entrepreneurial books and they're like, drink a green juice and get up and don't take no for an answer. Like hustle. We're like, you know what I mean? But as like creatives, cool. But
Mhm.
also we've got to learn how to like honor the muse and like really tap into something like deep and meaningful and connective if we want those people to stay.
Yep.
So I've kind of been like a yin yang balance between learning about business and leadership and all that stuff, but also got bored with that and learning how to learn about the arts right now. So yeah, that's been another
I
venture.
love it. I absolutely
Mm-hmm.
love it. I mean, there's so many resources of, especially for military. We have this thing called the Armed Services Arts Partnership. It's a nonprofit where you can take stand-up classes and creative writing courses. And then I just found out last week from a previous guest that the VA offers some sort of a free program where you can go and learn how to be a songwriter and how to write music. I mean,
Well,
there's
that's cool.
I had no idea. Yeah, there's apparently a VA program for the arts that you can go into and pursue, and it has nothing to do with your GI Bill or anything else. So there are a lot of ways to get into some of these programs, and even things like community theater or like
Mm-hmm.
doing the Moth. And I think what you touched upon really hit home for me, which is it's about being a good communicator, and being a good communicator carries you through in so many industries. I mean, I would encourage other people even in other business related industries to do things like improv, for an example. I mean, that
Yes.
forces you to think quickly on your
Yes.
feet and to play off of someone else, and to have, I mean, I would love to take improv classes. So these are all my little bucket list items too, once I'm out of the Navy and can devote more time to these things. So I love
Awesome.
that. I love that you're constantly learning and growing and finding these new ways to to develop yourself. It's
Thanks.
really remarkable.
Thank you.
So what is next for you? Like, where do you see yourself in like 5 years?
Um, 5 years ago, I had a baby and lived in an apartment and was podcasting out of my bedroom with a Walmart microphone and editing people's podcasts, barely making anything and not knowing what I was going to do next. That was 5 years ago. My life has just, oh my God, I'm not where I want to be, but the opportunities I've had in 5 years, I have no idea where the hell I'm going to be in 5 years. And I don't give a shit where I'm going to be in 5 years. I really don't. I want
Yeah.
to have fun and I want to be a good mom and I want to show up fully for you and I want to honor myself and really pay attention to all the weird things that make me quirky and odd and figure out how to make money doing that. I'm going to continue on that path right now. Where that takes me, I don't know. Um, I will continue to have conversations with people who inspire and interest me, and I will continue to share those out to people. Um, and I'm going to learn how to connect with people better and bring a better sense of belonging. That's the undertone and really what all this stuff that we do and make and all of that is to help people feel less alone and more seen. And whether that's through podcasting or stupid reels or an email list or whatever it is, I hope that's the undertone of everything that I do. I've learned enough over the past few years that there's no way in hell I could plan for anything.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I think that learning all these things just makes you more well-rounded and able to connect with different type of people. We did have a question that came in, which I thought was interesting. And I
Oh
know you
God,
have,
I forgot we were live.
yeah. Yes, yes. In
Hello,
fact,
people.
I should have probably mentioned that. I don't know if I thought I mentioned that when we were talking, but that's okay. You sounded amazing, Heather.
Thank you. Now I'm sweating.
The
What's the question? How
question
can
is,
one improve on improv? I'm not an improv. I've taken classes. The way you can improve at anything is to do it more often.
yeah, I
Do
know.
it.
Yeah.
Do it. Right. Get on a stage. Be around other people who do improv. Another huge life thing, find and be around and hang out. Here's the thing. We think everything's so weird until we start hanging out with people who do it all the time. Like I've been hanging out with a lot of my friends now are comedians and comedy. Okay, cool. That's a little odd. Now that I have a lot of friends who are comedians, it's very normal to think about posting a reel and doing some weird stuff and standing on a stage because that's normal for them. So I'm
That's
changing
interesting.
the narrative around what's normal by the environment that I have. And so, what do you want to be normal in your life?
Mhm.
Put yourself in that environment constantly, and it will become very normal for you.
I love that. I never thought about that. And I can relate a little bit. The times that I've been around, like I was a theater minor in college, but I just did the, backstage crew. I was a stage manager. And
Oh,
I
that's
can tell
cool.
you, which it was really a great experience actually. And I learned a lot about leadership. But I learned a lot about the creative process. And as I was around actors, I can just remember that my mind was just in a different state. And I think that that's kind of what you're talking
Yes.
about. When you get around people who think differently and see the world differently, it really just opens you up to things that you didn't think, like, could I do this? I don't
Yes.
know. Yes, maybe
Yes.
you can. It's so interesting, and I think sometimes we as humans, we limit ourselves. We say, "Oh, no, I could never
Preach.
do stand up," or "I could never do improv." Well, the first time you do those things, you'll probably be really crappy at them. I think I was listening to another one of your podcasts where it was a comedian, and she was saying how, like, the first few times she did it, she was terrible, and you
Mm-hmm.
knows that, like, 80% of her stuff or the stuff that she's working on isn't going to be good,
Yeah.
but it's like that 20%, that she pushes out, that's her
Yeah.
sweet spot, and so you have to be patient with that process.
100%. And this is a big ass world with a lot of people and a lot of opportunity. And I'll say for me, I have limited myself because I have this linear view of what a business owner looks like and an entrepreneur looks like and what being online and all this stuff. And it has to look like Grant F. and Cardone or,
Right.
whoever the person of the week is. It doesn't. There are people out there doing crazy ass things, making money and living a life on their own terms. And it's like a recipe that you make and that you put in the oven, bake, and eat yourself. Like you don't have to follow the recipe that was given to you. There's a million of it out there.
There
Yeah.
really are. I know,
You're
I
making me
totally agree.
sweat, Teresa. I'm getting all excited on this.
No, I think it's good. I mean, it makes me realize too that I'm on my right path. Like when I hear another
Good.
creative or a
Good.
fellow person like yourself, I felt the same way when I was talking to Robin. Robin, my buddy, can't remember her last name. She's gonna kill me, but the
My
army
best friend,
comedian.
Robin.
My best friend, Robin Johnson. She was
Robin Johnson.
saying about how, oh yeah, I know, right? But she was saying, about how in the army, and I feel the same way in the Navy, we tend to be kind of in this box where it's
Hmm.
like we're supposed to act a certain way. People expect us to be, the commander briefings are very formal affairs, and
Totally.
there's, and it's kind of interesting now because I have a boss who is a musician, our 3-star admiral, and I can tell he's a fellow creative. He'll even like very passionately and with much empathy, he'll critique the briefers, and you got these people from all these different countries that I work with. I work on NATO staff, so it's all these different NATO countries. But he does it with such care and with such
Mm. Mm.
empathy. But he's basically teaching them how to be better briefers. Like tells them not to look
Mm.
at their notes, don't look down. You know,
Mm.
just little things, and it's wonderful to see.
It's
So I
awesome.
believe that creativity and becoming better can happen in any field.
Amen.
Gods,
Amen.
Heather, I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but I know we're coming up on the top of the hour, and I think I want to just close with, what does service mean to you, and what does it mean to you to be of service, since this is a show about service?
It's so, what a question, because I'm probably going to take it a different way than maybe you intended it with service. I mean, obviously, military,
Sure.
entrepreneurs. But let's go back to when I said I was a kid and I was just really drawn to spirituality and serving God. Like there was like this service narrative around people and like our calling that was really messed up for me for a really long time because I thought service meant always being a martyr. Like if I wasn't suffering, I wasn't serving.
Mm. Yeah.
And I've had to unlearn that. And again, I think it's just maybe getting older or whatever, where I'm like, some of the best ways that you can serve people is being completely lit up
I love that.
and having so much fun and so happy. If I think about my two girls in there, they want a mom that, and I'm not this way all the time, but it's like the more happy I am with myself and confident I am, the more I'm serving them, because they're seeing a woman who's comfortable in her skin and
Mhm.
who's, whatever. Trust me, ain't that way all the time. But what I'm saying, like, that's a metaphor to say, like, serving is you serving yourself and really honoring what brings you joy and
Yeah.
fulfillment, and be as happy as you possibly can. And that's how we can serve and love this world.
Wow. No, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. And the same person asked this question. And so, what do you do when if you're serving though, and you're surrounded by people with rigid beliefs? How do you tackle that situation when, yeah, sometimes you can't control who you're around. So if you work with people who, and I can say that about some of my previous jobs. So you work with
Mm-hmm.
people who have just, they expect you to be in this box. How do you break free of that if you can't quit your job and you can't leave your family or leave certain family members for whatever reason?
Yeah, that's really tough. That is, I
Mhm.
really, 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 really tough. Um, I think, and I'll just say from my experience, the few things that I've worked on is really figuring out what is in my control, and noting the small micro moments that maybe I could eliminate where I am communicating with that person that could be taken away. So like, let me just give like a very tactical example. So let's say, you're on Slack with a group of people, and there's this one person who always wants to like voice memo, voice memo you, or jump on a huddle or jump on a Zoom. Are there small ways that you can eliminate that communication where either a I'm not available to huddle right now. My mic's not working or whatever. Can we email? I know that's something small, but like
Mhm.
those small energetic exchanges, because if we think about it, like I'm exchanging energy with you right now, right?
Mhm.
And so every form of communication is an energy exchange. And so how can we monitor those communications to where it's either A, limited, or B, another method to where there's less energy involved? And so for me, like email's a lot better, or text messaging versus voice and video. I get drained with voice and video with people who are energy suckers because you can feel it on them,
Oh,
right?
you can. Mhm.
100%. That, and I'll also say boundaries of saying, you know, you can't speak to me that way. I had a client just recently who was freaking out over something that had nothing to do with me, had to do with their own life, but that energy was like coming onto me. And I'm like, and I just flat out said, I have to protect my energy, and we're going to have to bring this down or come another time, because it was starting to affect me. And that's hard sometimes to say, because you're like, I don't want to lose that client. I don't want to lose that opportunity. But people actually respect that a
They
lot
do.
more.
They do.
And so don't be afraid to say, let's circle back. I'm protecting my energy right now,
Yeah.
flat out.
Yeah, one of my biggest, regrets at my last job is I had somebody who I felt was, very, verbally abusive towards me, and my boss, at the time, he rightly called me out as I was leaving, and he said, "Why didn't you just tell her to knock it off?" And
Come on.
looking back, I wish I had. I
We have
really
more power in us, we think.
Mhm. Because I
Yep.
felt she triggered something within me that was from my childhood, and I just didn't wanna confront her, and I didn't wanna go through the work that I thought it was gonna take to confront her with it, but looking back, I really wish I had, and
Oh,
it was a
same.
lesson learned to me. I mean, and
Same.
I addressed it to my boss at the very end as I was leaving, but, it was certainly something that, I take with me, and I know I'll address it differently going forward, and just even bringing it up was more than I had ever done before in the
Yeah.
past. So I gave myself grace with the fact that I at least had that boundary, had enough of a boundary to address it and to talk about the issue. And then next time, if this happens again and somebody comes at me with abusive rolling eyes and just microaggressions, I mean, I'm going to call them on it.
Good.
I mean, you have
Yep.
to, you
Yep.
absolutely have to. But this has been such a pleasure. I want to definitely let people know, where can they find you. Number one, I think it's heatherparady.com. I think you have
Everything's
your own.
Heather Parody. Yeah.
I know. That's awesome that you have your own website with your own .com, so you're easy, very easy to find.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that you would just want to say to our audience that I haven't asked you about?
Yes, I would say please subscribe, rate, and review Stories of Service and show your support to this creator because, first of all, congratulations on, you say 60 something
65.
episode. Yeah, that's huge. That's huge. You talk about a service is showing up 65 times and giving your heart and your soul to a group of people that you don't even know. That's incredible. So, those who love and support Teresa, please take the extra 2 seconds it takes to share it, subscribe, or whatever. But just for the audience, I would say, I quote this a lot. Sam Jones, a previous guest on my show, one of my favorite humans in the world, he said that he wishes he would have taken himself more seriously at the beginning of his career. And that really stuck with me because, I mean, in his 20s and 30s, he's shooting photos for Rolling Stone magazine and, getting to sit with George Clooney, and he has a show, where he interviews people from the office, and like he's been able to do incredible things in his life. And he told me that he didn't take himself seriously as soon as he wishes he would have. And so, again, back to that internal stuff. Creator, take yourself seriously. Like really own your gifts and your talents. And know that nobody has it all freaking figured out. And anybody who
Nope.
says they're lying to you and trying to sell you something.
Well, I agree. Well, Heather, this has been such a pleasure. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be able to talk to you, and I,
Thank
I know we'll
you.
I know we'll keep in touch. I'll meet you
Sure.
backstage. I'm going to go on full screen just for a moment and say
Sure.
goodbye to everyone.
Okay. Bye,
But
y'all.
thank you guys for watching another amazing episode. I will be podcasting over the Christmas break. I'm booked up until January right now. I try not to get myself too overbooked because then by then I know people have got engagements and other things that might pop up. But I thank all of you for watching tonight, and I will see you all again next week. Bye bye now.